At my age, celebrating a birthday. It's just too much. Should I put a candle on the cake for every year? With that many, I'm not sure I could blow them all out. The woman in front of me glared, her face turning bright red. I wished she could understand my frustration. After all, my arms and legs were broken, and I was in pain all over. Yet, she just wouldn't let it go. But this ridiculous relationship will finally end. I hope she goes to hell. My name is Harper. I'm a 31-year-old office worker. After graduating from college, I got a job at a local company and met my husband, Henry, through a colleague. At first, he was just a quiet guy at the bar during our office parties. But after getting his contact from a colleague, he started reaching out, and we began going out for drinks and hanging out. One day, after a few such outings, a blushing Henry confessed his feelings for me. I felt the same way, so I happily accepted. After dating for a few years, he proposed. My family is very close, and I want to build a warm home with Harper. He told me that. Little did I know, years later, I'd face such a nightmare. Starting next year, I'll be transferred. It's back to my hometown. I heard this from my husband a year after our marriage. I thought, so, the time has finally come. His company transfers him every few years. We currently live in my hometown, but not his. His family home is quite far, over an hour by plane. I knew about the transfers when we got married, so I was mentally prepared. I never thought of divorcing or living separately because of this. I've only ever left my hometown for trips or work training, so leaving was a bit scary. But knowing he'd be with me was comforting. My mom and the others are excited to see us more often. Hearing that made me a bit uneasy. And there was a reason. My husband has an older brother, Bil, who got married to his high school classmate, Sael, due to a shotgun wedding when he was 19. Bil, who had just started working, lived with his in-laws due to financial constraints. Their son, born around that time, is now in middle school. I sometimes wonder why they don't move out and live on their own. But it seems the reason is Mil and Sael. They're as close as a real mother and daughter. Before the transfer, we visited his family a few times a year. But after marrying, I couldn't just be a guest. I tried to help in the kitchen, but they'd say, "Oh, Harper, just relax. We've got this." Yeah, Harper, leave this to us. But, the hallway's a bit dirty. Could you clean it? They'd chat away happily after pushing me out. I didn't feel completely left out, but I did feel alienated. When I left the room, I could hear their laughter. Were they talking behind my back?
Well, there's a difference between a daughter-in-law of several years and one of a few months.
I hoped we'd get along someday, but every visit to my in-laws made me feel isolated. Seeing me with nothing to do, my husband would call out, "Come here, Harper. Let's drink together." Mil and Sael looked at me as if I was slacking off. Yet, when they spoke, it was with a fake smile. We're fine over here.
What do they want from me?
So, every time I visited my in-laws, I felt mentally drained. Fil and Bil were kind, and Bil's son, Kenta, though a bit distant probably due to his teenage years, would respond if spoken to. You two seem close, but Harper's here too. Include her in the conversation. Fil would often say that, perhaps out of concern. On such occasions, they'd invite me with a smile. We were just about to call you, Harper. But once I joined, Mil and Sael would burst into laughter over some private joke. Did something happen? Even when I tried to join in, I'd get a dismissive, "Oh, something like that," from both.
It feels so familiar. Oh, I remember.
In school, after a fight with a friend. She spread rumors about me, and all the girls in class ignored me. Yet, in front of the teacher, they acted like best friends. The feeling at my in-laws was eerily similar. But I'm an adult now, in my late 20s to early 30s. Acting childish at this age. From then on, I stopped trying to get close. My husband noticed the tension between me, Mil, and Sael. You don't have to force yourself. My mom and Sael are acting childish, he'd say, always on my side. He once confronted them about their attitude towards me, but it didn't change. I asked him not to bring it up anymore, not wanting to make things worse. After my husband's transfer, I left my long-time job. With no kids, I didn't plan to be a homemaker. I started job hunting immediately after moving, and was fortunate to find a full-time position close to home. Starting at a new company was nerve-wracking, but my colleagues and boss were kind and welcoming. After the cold treatment from Mil and Sael, this warmth was comforting. However, a new issue arose. Frequent messages from Sael. Harper, you haven't visited in a while. Are you busy? As your senior in marriage, I think visiting is a form of respect, don't you think? There was so much written about it. At first, I was happy to hear from Sael and replied promptly. She'd always respond within minutes. But with work, I couldn't always check my phone. Despite not replying, Sael kept messaging. One lunch break, I found 10 messages from her. It was a bit unsettling. Is she that free? Eventually, my delayed responses upset her. Are my messages bothering you? I get it. Fine then. After that, the messages stopped. When I talked to my husband, he said, "This is pretty insane. My brother mentioned it too. It seems Sael has a really short temper. This is pretty insane. My brother mentioned it too. It seems Sael has a really short temper." One moment she'd send me an angry message, and the next, she'd apologize. Then she'd get angry again. I thought, she must be so busy. Perhaps because of her temperament, I heard that the BIL couple often argue. Even when Sael is clearly in the wrong, Mil intervenes, making things worse. Weren't they a close-knit family? When I asked my husband, he said that ever since Sael got married, the atmosphere at home started to change. Mil always wanted a daughter and adores Sael. I thought, I'm a woman too, right? But I had no desire to get close to such people. I just wanted them to do their own thing. But then, out of the blue, I got a call from an unexpected person. It was Mil. I was a bit taken aback, but I took a deep breath and answered. Hello, Harper? Mil, with a slightly cheerful voice, said. She's having a birthday party soon, and would love for my husband and me to attend. Oh, you don't have to bring a gift or anything? She repeated that 3 times during the call. So, she's basically saying, come celebrate my birthday and bring a gift. I've never been invited by the birthday person themselves before. Typical of her, I thought. I'll have to check with Henry when he gets home, I replied. Mil said, if it's really not possible for both of you, just you will do. And don't worry about the gift. With that, she hung up. I have work too, but it seems she's already decided I'm attending. Usually, she'd want both of us there, but she must really want a gift this time. I sighed. When I discussed it with my husband after he came home, he said he had an important business meeting that day and couldn't make it. When I informed Mil, she said, that's fine. Just you, Harper. I'll be waiting. And she hung up.
I mean, I have work too.
I could have chosen not to go, but I thought I'd try to fulfill the duties Sale always talks about. So, I decided to attend alone. By then, I had some paid leave, which I reluctantly used. Before I knew it, the day arrived. I headed to my in-laws' house earlier than the time mentioned. When I entered, Sael was busily cooking. It was awkward since we hadn't met since that message. I greeted her, but she didn't respond. In the living room, an excited Mael was eagerly waiting. She had asked me to decorate the room, so I hung up the various decorations I bought. She just stared at them in silence.
I wish she'd go somewhere else.
It looks plain and cheap. She whispered that so I could hear and quickly went to the kitchen. After a while, Ciel came into the living room and said, "Hey, can you get the cake? I'm tied up right now." She glared at me, looked around the decorated room, and muttered, "Lacks charm." I felt embarrassed being told that. "I'll finish up here and then head out," I said. Ciel laughed and replied, "With these unimpressive decorations, what's the point now? You should have said something sooner." Not wanting to provoke her further, I took the reservation slip for the cake she handed me with a dismissive gesture. Feeling a bit annoyed, I headed to the front door. "Oh, by the way, I told them you'd be paying today," she said, and then slammed the door behind me.
Really? She couldn't have said that any differently?
I considered just leaving, but I thought better of it and headed to the nearby bakery with a heavy heart. "Here it is," the clerk said, showing me the cake. I was taken aback. It was a custom-made cake, large enough for a crowd. Surrounded by whipped cream and fruits, there was an illustration of a family in the center. Seeing it made me incredibly sad. It was based on a family photo taken during my first visit to my in-laws. But I wasn't in the cake's illustration. Ciel probably requested to exclude me. The clerk, noticing my reaction, seemed uncomfortable. The bill was $80, which shocked me further. If I'd known the cake was this big, I would have driven. As I was walking back, I noticed a car swerving dangerously. Before I knew it, the car jumped the curb and headed straight for me. The pain hit me instantly. "Someone's been hit. Call an ambulance," I heard a kind voice before blacking out. When I came to, I was in a hospital bed. A doctor explained my injuries. A broken right arm and leg. Thankfully, my head was fine. The driver had fallen asleep at the wheel. "Do you have someone we can contact?" I gave them my husband's contact, as well as Mael and Sales, thinking they might be worried. I noticed the slightly crushed cake box next to me. I must have thrown it when I saw the car coming. I was dozing off when my phone kept ringing. Answering it, I heard, "Where are you? It's my birthday. I heard you had a minor accident, but you're okay, right? Hurry back and help with the preparations." She hung up without waiting for a reply. My broken arm and leg told a different story.
I'm done with this family. They better brace themselves.
I pleaded with the doctor to let me leave, promising to return soon, and headed to my in-laws. With a strong ally by my side, I wasn't afraid. When I arrived, the two of them were waiting outside, probably eager to make a snide remark. As I transferred from the car to a borrowed wheelchair, Mael stammered, "Wait, did you break bones? What happened?" Seeing my injuries, she seemed genuinely shaken. My right arm and leg were casted, and I had numerous scrapes and bruises. It was clear to anyone that my injuries weren't minor. "I came because Mael insisted. Here's your birthday cake. And good news, Henry came to support me." Henry pushes my wheelchair. After finishing a business call, He had rushed over when he heard the voicemail from the hospital while I was napping. He was by my side when the call from my mother-in-law came in, shaking with anger as he listened to the conversation with me. He told me we didn't have to go, but I pleaded, and he humbly spoke with the doctor for me. "Are you out of your mind? Look at Harper. How is this a minor injury? Tell me." It was the first time I'd seen him so furious. My mother-in-law responded, "No, you got it wrong. I don't like answering calls from unknown numbers. The only reason I picked up the hospital's call was..." She glanced sideways at my sister-in-law. It seemed she hadn't expected my condition to be this severe. And she hadn't anticipated my husband's arrival either, as she was at a loss for words. Then, "What's all this commotion about?" came a voice. With that, my father-in-law and others emerged from the house. "What? Harper, you're seriously injured. I heard it was just a scratch from a fall." All eyes turned to my sister-in-law. "Well, anyone can mishear things." She tried to defend herself. But such a transparent lie, nobody would believe it. My brother-in-law said to her, "What were you thinking? Apologize to Harper." "Why should I apologize? I didn't hit her with my car," she retorted. What a way to dig her own grave. The story about a scratch from a fall was a lie she made up. Let's just move on. "Oh, want to see the cake? It's amazing," I said, and with my husband's help, I took the cake out of its box. Whether it landed just right or was secured really well, it was nothing short of a miracle. I was badly hurt, but the cake was nearly unscathed. Seeing the cake, my father-in-law and the others grew even angrier. "Hey, why isn't Harper in this photo?" Faced with this question, my sister-in-law, who had ordered the cake, desperately said, "Oh my! It must be the bakery's mistake. I'll call and complain." She tried to escape the awkward situation, but I stopped her. "Wait a moment. Look at this." I signaled to my husband. In my phone's photo gallery was a picture given to me by a cake shop employee. It was probably the final design of the cake, and there was a big note saying, "At the customer's request, cut out this person." My sister-in-law hadn't noticed, but the cake shop employee told me. "Actually, I went to middle school with her. She used to ostracize me. She's still doing such childish things." She had given me the photo, saying I could use it if I wanted. "Sister-in-law, you're still doing your foolish things even as an adult." Everyone glared at her, except for my mother-in-law. But she alone said, "Do you enjoy blaming her so much? She said it was a mistake. You're so unpleasant." She glared at me. Everyone wondered what she was talking about. Moreover, she had opened the present I brought while I was away and mocked the scarf inside, saying it was an unattractive color. That's too bad. We put so much thought into it, right, Henry? At my words, my mother-in-law looked puzzled. That's because the scarf was a gift my husband had spent an hour choosing at a department store since he couldn't attend today. "My mom and I both love yellow. We used to say we were alike because of it when I was a kid." He shared such a heartwarming story with me. Yet, they treated him like this. My mother-in-law, trembling, shouted, "It's all your fault. Everything. On such a special birthday." She was so loud and obnoxious that I retorted, "Act your age. It's just a birthday. Are you nuts? Should we put a candle on the cake for every year you've been alive? I'm not sure you'd be able to blow them all out." I didn't regret saying it, because today would be the last time I'd see my mother-in-law. "We're leaving," Mom, sister, you two are out of your minds. We won't be coming back here. We don't want to see you again. We don't need any inheritance. Goodbye, Henry said, pushing my wheelchair away. The family he once loved was nowhere to be seen. He chose me over his own parents. That made me so happy. The aftermath was chaotic. My father-in-law offered my mother-in-law a divorce. She didn't accept easily, saying, "You should reconsider, FIL." I thought, how dare she, but then my sister-in-law chimed in. Is this the time to worry about others? My brother-in-law said to her. What? My sister-in-law looked puzzled as my brother-in-law, like my father-in-law, proposed a divorce. Apparently, my mother-in-law and sister-in-law had been out partying from morning till night lately. My retired father-in-law took care of most of the household chores. He had been patient, thinking she had supported him for many years, but he was fed up with her attitude towards me and the fact that they had been neglecting their grandson, Kenta. Moreover, right after Kenta was born, my sister-in-law claimed she had postpartum depression and went back to her parents' house. It turned out she was lying and just wanted to party. When her parents found out, they disowned her.
She had no place to go, so she clung to my mother-in-law.
She also lied to my mother-in-law, saying I had badmouthed her. MIL, who easily believed that is also MIL. I was dumbfounded when I heard this. I hope those two malicious women live happily ever after. I don't need such a family. In the end, they couldn't come to an agreement. I'll give you the house. Do whatever you want. And my father-in-law said. They agreed to divorce when they realized they'd get the house, but my ex-sister-in-law said, "Make sure you pay child support." To which my brother-in-law replied, "Why would I? I'm not giving you custody." She threatened to sue, but he had no intention of giving up custody, and Kenta said, "I'd obviously go with Dad." She was counting on the child support, but the divorce papers were already filed, and the divorce was finalized. You can't live on a house alone. I hope she struggles. A few months later, I was still working. We have an interview today. Please join me. At my company, an employee always attends interviews to provide feedback. Excuse me. I couldn't hide my shock when I saw the nervous person who walked in for the interview. She was wearing a wrinkled suit and dirty pumps. Clearly not dressed appropriately for an interview. To my surprise, it was my former sister-in-law. I almost laughed out loud. She must have been attending countless interviews and had forgotten that I worked here. Her interview responses were terrible, and it was clear she wouldn't be hired even if I didn't say anything. She had no work experience, and when asked about it, she said, "I was taking care of my ex-husband's parents after our divorce." I struggled to hold back my laughter. When my boss asked if I had any questions, I said, "It's wonderful that you're so family-oriented. What would you do if, during work hours, you got a call from a hospital saying a loved one had an accident and needed you right away?" I looked straight into her eyes as I asked. She avoided my gaze and replied in a soft voice, "Of course, I'd go to the hospital immediately." The interview ended after I thanked her. My boss asked about the intent behind my question. I explained everything, and he was shocked. Unsurprisingly, she wasn't hired. That was the last time I saw my former sister-in-law. Years later, I spoke to someone living near my former in-laws. They said the two women still lived together, but their constant shouting matches could be heard daily, sometimes even requiring police intervention. Apparently, my former sister-in-law could only get part-time jobs and never held on to them for long. They were scraping by on my former mother-in-law's pension. She chose her daughter over her son and husband of many years. I wonder if she ever regretted that decision. It's none of my business now. I still keep in touch with my father-in-law and the rest. We recently went on an overnight trip together. My brother-in-law's son, Kenta, is starting college in the spring. He's grown up so much, and it makes me realize how fast time flies. The only ones stuck in time are those two women. As I pondered this, my mobile phone rang on my way home from work. "Mom, come home soon." It was a call from my beloved daughter, whom my husband Henry and I were blessed with after everything. I couldn't help but smile. "I'll be home soon," I replied and hurried home to my loving family. I'm Jessica, a 38-year-old office worker. I have been married to my husband, Brandon, for 5 years now. However, we've been struggling to have children. Being the eldest and only son, Brandon has always been under pressure from his mother, Chloe, to have a boy since we got married. These days, few people care about the gender of their children, and either a son or daughter can be an heir. Brandon himself doesn't care about the gender and says there's no rush to have children. But Chloe sees me as an adversary and always tells me when Brandon's not around. "A woman who can't have children is useless in this family. If you can't have one, you might as well leave." Her words have hurt me deeply. "I'm sorry, Chloe, but honestly, your words are very pressuring. I wish you wouldn't say such things." I finally gathered the courage to express my feeling to Chloe. But she didn't understand it at all and became even more oppressive, telling me not to defy her. I was shocked. I never expected such words from her. At first, I endured it because she's Brandon's mother and I didn't want to cause any trouble. But enduring Chloe's sarcasm while undergoing fertility treatments was mentally taxing, and my health started to decline. Realizing I couldn't hide it anymore, I confided in Brandon. Furious, Brandon sternly warned Chloe, which stopped her surprise visits to our apartment for a while, but she continued to hurl insults daily through WhatsApp. Then one day, I found out I was pregnant at the fertility clinic. The first sight of the fetal ultrasound filled me with indescribable emotions. When I showed Brandon the ultrasound at home, we both cried tears of joy. But our happiness was short-lived as I remembered a significant problem. Chloe. Telling her about the pregnancy would surely lead to her frequent visits, insisting that pregnancy isn't an illness, telling me to move around, or bragging about her own experiences. The doctor advised me not to overexert myself until a heartbeat is confirmed, so I was torn about what to do. After discussing with Brandon, we decided I should stay at my parents' house for a while. If I'm at my parents' house, even if I'm not feeling well, my parents are there, and Chloe won't make a surprise visit to my parents' house. It's close to my workplace and Chloe wouldn't barge in there. I called my mother right away, explaining about the pregnancy in Chloe, and decided to return home for a while. Brandon drove me to my parents' house, where they were overjoyed about my pregnancy. After greeting my parents, Brandon returned to our apartment. Being back at my parents' house, away from Chloe, brought me peace of mind. Soon after, morning sickness hit, and I spent days in bed. At work, my pale face raised concerns, and my boss suggested me to take a break, which I gratefully accepted. Many women at my job, including those who have undergone fertility treatments, understood my situation. Their support was comforting. Other than severe morning sickness, my pregnancy was uneventful, and the baby grew healthily. Feeling the first kicks was indescribably touching, and I lovingly caressed my belly every day. In fact, Brandon and I had already planned to move to a bigger house once we had a child. The reason is, our apartment was getting old, and while it's fine for just the two of us, it felt inconvenient for raising a child. We had set various criteria like proximity to stations, hospitals, and shopping facilities, and were searching accordingly. Then, Brandon suddenly sent me a photo. It was of a new high-rise condominium near the station. The area around the condo had everything needed for living, like commercial facilities and hospitals,
and it was close to nurseries and schools, making it convenient for kids in the future. Completion is expected next month, and I casually entered a lottery for it. Surprisingly, we won. If you don't like it, we can just transfer it to someone else. Jessica, you can see it and decide. Hearing this, I immediately opened their website, was taken aback by the stylish design of the rooms, and exclaimed,
What?
the latest system kitchen, a bathroom with a sauna. Moreover, the unit we won was on the top floor of the 30-story building. The view from the window was amazing. I was a bit hesitant about the price, but Brandon works at a top-tier company, and with our salaries, we could afford it, so I decided to sign the contract for this condominium. Of course, I couldn't keep the purchase of a new high-rise condominium from my in-laws. I talked about it through Austin, my father-in-law. Austin said, "It's impressive that you young ones bought a condominium. If you need anything, I'm here to help." However, Chloe was not happy about this. When she found out we bought a high-rise condo, she was upset that we weren't living with her. Then, an incident happened. A week after moving in, Chloe suddenly visited. As usual, she went around the room complaining, but I entertained her with a smile. Then, suddenly, Chloe said she dropped her keys near the emergency stairs.
What? Why did you drop your keys by the emergency stairs? Don't tell me you climbed all the way up here?
I said, but apparently, she had dropped them while checking where the emergency stairs were, just in case. I went to the emergency stairs instead of Chloe to get the keys. At that moment,
I'm taking this house.
I was suddenly pushed from behind, lost my balance, and fell down the stairs.
Ouch! Help, somebody!
Unable to stand due to pain and shock, I suddenly felt warm water flowing around my feet. Realizing I had probably broken my water, I thought about calling an ambulance, but since I had hit my head hard, I lost consciousness. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed. Brandon was there, looking worriedly at me.
Jessica, are you okay?
Brandon asked, visibly shaken, as I woke up.
Where am I? What happened to me?
I was still confused from just waking up and had a fuzzy consciousness from the head injury. When I touched my stomach, I felt something was off. My stomach, which was big until recently, had shrunk. Realizing this, I felt the blood drain from my face.
Hey, why is my stomach like this? Where's my baby? Where did my baby go?
I asked Brandon. Then Brandon quietly began to speak. The baby in your belly is. The moment I heard those words, I couldn't stop my tears and began crying out loud in the hospital room. Someone on the same floor found me, noticing the emergency staircase door left open. When they went to close it, they found me collapsed and hurriedly called an ambulance. Brandon asked why I approached the emergency stairs, so I explained everything about my interaction with Chloe. I was mentally harassed by Chloe when Brandon wasn't around before, which had once caused me to fall ill. Because of that, Brandon instructed me to always carry a voice recorder. Of course, I started recording the moment Chloe showed up unannounced. After listening to the voice recorder, it was clear that Chloe was the culprit. Brandon was furious to learn that his own mother had done such a thing. Then, a call came in on Brandon's mobile phone from a relative. On the call, Brandon heard a shocking fact. It seemed Chloe, thinking the baby had died, was telling relatives while crying. "Oh, my poor sweet grandchild has gone to heaven. It's so sad. It's because Jessica, even though she's pregnant, went out riding a bicycle." She was making up absurd stories. However, Austin, who was present, had heard nothing like that from either me or Brandon and was looking at Chloe in utter disbelief. It seemed impossible that Austin didn't know anything about it. And the idea of a woman in her 9th month of pregnancy riding a bicycle. That's why the relative called Brandon. It was unbelievable. Then Brandon, taking the voice recorder, said,
Jessica, let me borrow this for a bit. Can you leave the rest to me?
He then left the hospital room. As Brandon left, my parents arrived. After I explained everything, they were both shocked and angry. I decided to trust Brandon and wait in the hospital room for the outcome. Meanwhile, Brandon met with the relative who had called him. It turned out Chloe was gathering relatives at her house, explaining the incident. Of course, her words were nonsense, and she was just trying to make herself look innocent. Some relatives believed Chloe and wept, while others were skeptical and viewed her with suspicion. Suddenly, Brandon burst in, causing Chloe to look at him in surprise. Huh? Brandon, why are you here? You were supposed to be with Jessica. She needs you. It's so sad about the baby. I was looking forward to its birth. Chloe said, even feigning tears. At that moment, something snapped in Brandon.
Enough, Mom. I know everything. You pushed Jessica down the emergency stairs,
he said, pulling out the voice recorder in front of the relatives. Everyone was shocked to hear the conversation recorded so vividly. Who heard the voice could not hide their surprise.
Is this true?
Austin, whose face turned pale due to the shock, asked Chloe.
No, that's not true. This is nonsense. I didn't go near the emergency stairs.
Even after hearing the recording, Chloe insisted she hadn't done it. However, there was a security camera nearby, and its footage would surely show me and Chloe entering the emergency stairwell. When Brandon mentioned this, Chloe, who had been speaking fluently until then, turned pale and began to tremble.
How awful. We're family, aren't we? How dare you shame your own mother like this?
Chloe clung to Brandon, insisting she was innocent and that it was Jessica who had slipped on her own. Even if that were true, leaving someone who had fallen and not helping them is questionable. However, the relatives who had already heard the voice recording did not believe Chloe's story. Instead, they urged her to go to the police and turn herself in.
It's not me. I'm not the bad one. You understand, don't you? You know I'm not the kind of person who would do this. Prove it in front of everyone.
Chloe desperately appealed to Austin to affirm her innocence. But no one believed Chloe's story anymore. Soon, the police arrived, and from the audio and the subsequent security camera footage, it was clear that Chloe was the perpetrator. She was taken to the police station and arrested. The reason she did this was because the baby was a girl. Chloe had always been fixated on having a grandson, and when she found out the baby in the womb was a girl, she was disappointed. She thought that by pretending this baby never existed, she could try for a boy next time. When I heard this from the police, my head went blank with shock. Despite all that had happened, the baby grew healthily in an incubator and was discharged after 2 months. A few days after coming home from the hospital, Austin visited our apartment to apologize for the incident. He said that he and Chloe had divorced, that their house was sold, and he was going to move back to his family home. It was sad that the house where Brandon had grown up was gone, but since Austin wasn't to blame, we told him he was always welcome to visit. We regularly let Austin see his granddaughter after that. He adored his first grandchild and played with her with such kindness in his eyes. 3 years later, our second child, a boy, was born. Our daughter, now a big sister, couldn't wait to take care of her brother and was always by his side. Watching them was heartwarming, and every day was filled with happiness. But that happiness was disrupted by a visit from someone. The doorbell rang repeatedly, and when I checked the monitor, to my surprise, it was Chloe. I thought I would never see her again, and seeing her brought back memories of that day, making me feel nauseous. What do you want now?
I have no intention of seeing you again.
Please leave, I said, but Chloe wouldn't listen. Apparently, Chloe had fallen ill, struggling daily with her health and finding it difficult to go to the hospital without a car. She had divorced Austin, and their house was now just an empty lot. She had no one else to turn to for help. Shockingly, Chloe knew I had given birth to a boy. She had apparently seen us in town, noticing Brandon holding our son. To Chloe, it was the long-desired grandson. She was determined to live with us and make the boy fond of her. So you finally became a proper woman, giving birth to a boy. When you were pregnant with a girl, I was so disappointed in you. But now that you've had a boy, let's forget the past and live together, shall we? For a moment, I doubted my own ears. Live together after all that? Impossible. What are you talking about? After what you did, living together is impossible. Leave now, or I'll call the police. Unfortunately, Brandon was at work at this crucial time. In distress, I immediately called Austin. He was supposed to visit the apartment today to see his son and daughter. With trembling hands, I called Austin. It turned out he was already near the apartment, so he hurried over. When Austin arrived, Chloe exclaimed in surprise. We couldn't argue in the entrance of the apartment building, as it would disturb others. But I had no intention of letting Chloe, whom we had cut ties with, into our apartment again. I gave Chloe an ultimatum, telling her I would call the police if she really didn't leave. Realizing her wish wouldn't be fulfilled, Chloe started to create a scene at the entrance and began arguing with Austin. Troubled, I contacted Brandon at work. After hearing the situation, Brandon called the police, and they soon arrived at our apartment. The police, understanding the situation, took Chloe away in a police car. As the commotion was in a conspicuous place, several residents of the apartment witnessed it. I felt sorry for causing inconvenience to many people. Later, after Brandon returned home, we discussed the situation with Austin and decided to move. As long as we lived here, Chloe would surely come back. We couldn't risk something happening to the children next time. Besides, Austin, though he said he had gone back to his family home, was living alone since his parents had passed away. Our daughter liked Austin and had previously expressed a desire to live with him. Austin is a kind person, and leaving him alone at his age worried us. When we proposed living together, Austin was very happy, despite everything that had happened. Afterwards, we bought a used property in the next town. Though it was second-hand, the house itself was very nice, and the surrounding environment was good too. Living in a high-rise was nice, but raising children in a place surrounded by nature seemed better. Right after moving, my daughter and Austin went to a mountain to hunt for beetles. Seeing them so happy made me feel that deciding to live together and choosing this place was the right decision. Once a month, we invite my parents over, and we all enjoy a home party, leading a happy life. Meanwhile, according to someone I was close with at the high-rise apartment, Chloe, undeterred, visited the high-rise again. But when told we had moved and she couldn't find out where, she left disappointed. If it weren't for what happened, Chloe might have been here, feeling the children's growth with us. Well, it's a natural consequence, but still. Later, I heard Chloe reluctantly returned to her hometown, rented a small apartment, and now lives a lonely life, working part-time in cleaning.